Welcome in, Sneeples. Hunted Draft is in full swing, and like we do with every set, we have the primer just for you. Everything you need to know about draft.
All right, so before we get going, I do have draft rankings. This is a snippet of what you can see. This is on my personal Patreon. The link is right here. There is draft and sealed rankings for each set. From the hunted going forward, I did just make this Patreon, but we will have it for each set. We'll have in draft or in-game online coaching if you sign up for that tier, and then I'll also include exclusive draft videos. So if you want an even higher learning of draft, if you want to have draft rankings to help you understand which cards are more valuable, consider checking this out. Now let's get into the heroes of Hunted or the Hunted. All right, so we have Arakni. This is our Chaos Assassin. We're going to be marking to enable disruptive effects, either destroying the arsenal or taking cards out of hand. We have Retrieve mechanic to bring back our daggers from the graveyard. And then we have attack and defense reactions. Arakni has the most access to all of the different reactions. Cindra is our Draconic Ninja. As being a ninja, she looks to go wide. She has a lot of cards that have additional effects if they are Draconic, something like Dragon Power. And she, too, looks to retrieve her daggers, just like the Assassins. And then finally, we have Fang, our Draconic Warrior. He looks to become online by having 3 fealties, making attacks with daggers be free. He has a ton of attack reactions, as well as Draconic instances that looks to give his Draconic dagger go again. So some things to know. This only has 3 heroes, which means there is what is known as the middle hero blues. All right. When there is 3 heroes, the split of a pod tends to be 3-3-2. That is 3 of one hero, 3 of another hero, 2 of the last. Because this is not an even split, there is a middle hero. So if there were 3 Fangs, then there will be a middle Fang, and that middle Fang tends to have a very tough time. So this set can have the middle hero blues. The way to counter that is to stay open. This set does allow you to stay open because of the hybrid cards. There's a lot of this is basically a triangle draft format, which is very good. And you only need to pick the hero that you're not going to play as after pick 5. You don't even need to commit to a hero until, 2/3 of the way through the first pack. And then there is a ton of attack reactions, and there is a surprisingly few amount of defense reactions. So that is something to definitely keep in mind, especially if you are or going against warrior or assassin. The just plethora of attack reacts that are out there should make you think that there's going to be a little bit more damage coming through if you only put a few block in front of either a weapon or an attack. All right, and what's really cool about this set is that yellows functions as blues. This is a very, very red-heavy set, especially it being based in Volcore. That was kind of to be expected. You don't need a lot of blues like you would in like Rosetta or even part the Misspell. Instead, yellows can function that way. You really only times need like 2 resources to have a fully functional hand, and therefore yellows can be just as good as blue when we're drafting the hunted. All right, so let's talk about Arakni. So Arakni will want to draft around 10 red stealth cards, and the reason why you want 10 red stealth cards is that red is the best color for attacks, and then Arakni uses these stealth cards to be able to have disruptive effect, depending on which hero Arakni turns into, or which demi hero. As well as there's a lot of attack reactions that work with stealth cards. So Arakni gives a +1 to stealth attacks, and gives them go again, the base form, if they hit. So there's a lot of reasons that you want to have stealth cards so you can continue doing such. You're also going to want to draft around 2 defense reactions and 3 to 4 attack reactions. The reason why is, first off, these are just good cards, especially for Arakni. But there is the trap door. And if you roll a 6, you become trapdoor, and you want to be able to have a trap to be able to search for. And make sure it is a trap. Defense reactions do not count as traps, they have to say trap on the card. So you want 2 defense reactions, but really you want 2 traps. And then for the attack reactions, you want 3 to 4 just so that your opponent is kept guessing on how much they need to block your dagger or your attack action. You want to draft around 8 to 10 combinations of blues and yellows. Again, yellows can be just as good as blues here. Kind of depends on how many 1-cost attack reactions you might have. It will depend on how many more blues you want. But generally speaking, you do want to try to swing a dagger just about every turn. And that is because that allows you to mark. And so that's really where you want the 1 blue or the 1 yellow in the hand. Talking about the gameplay of Arakni here, marking is the top priority. Marking allows your attacks to get the buff from the base Arakni. Marking allows you to turn into other Araknis, which will have even more devastating effects. So we really want to mark our opponents just to have either a buff on our end or at least be able to turn into a different Arakni. Disruptive effects with attack reactions helps take the tempo. You're kind of a slow deck. You're slower than the other 2 heroes. The other 2 heroes, being Draconic, are very aggressive. You're a little bit slower, but the way that you manage your opponent is through disruptive effects. Effects like Mark of the Black Widow and Mark of the Funnel Web are very disruptive effects that can just look to ruin your opponent's either hand or arsenal. And just be able to make it where their turn isn't going to be as strong coming against you. So that's what we're looking to do. Of course, your demi heroes that you turn into also have disruptive effects. You're going to swing dagger often for mark or attack reacts. So there is a few different ways you could be playing Arakni. It'll kind of be dependent on how you draft. If you are able to get a good amount of stealth cards, then you can just worry about doing attack reactions on your stealth cards and marking your opponent so you can turn into different Arachnis. However, if you found yourself lacking a little bit on the stealth cards, hopefully you have a ton of dagger attack reactions where you can swing a dagger and come over the top with all sorts of attack reactions like incision or scar tissue, 2 sides of the blade. There's all cards that look to increase power on your dagger. So this can help you get over so that you can mark your opponent or just help you get damage through. Now let's go and look at a 3-0 draft deck that we had with this Arakni. Now, what's pretty funny to me at least is that all these 3-0 decks I'm going to show you aren't really busted by any means, but I think that's a good thing. So you can see that you don't need to have a busted draft deck to do good here. So it looks like I beat the Mirror Match, Cindra, and the Fang in the finals. So I got 1 of each. We got a good mix of equipments here. A few headpieces, no legs. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but you know, whatever. The stealth cards you can see are a little bit on the light side. We have 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. So we're just 1 off where I really want to be. I have a ton of Mark of the Funnel Webs, and I will say that this really performed very well. There is a lot of people that looks to Arsenal against you because you are disrupting their hand or you're doing something where they just feel like they need to set up a bigger turn, and this allows you to ruin that setup. I have only 1 trap, unfortunately. I would like another one, but 1 did the job. I do have a ton of attack reactions, scar tissue being a very good one, as it does not only pump up my dagger, but also looks to mark them, which is very good. That's what we want. I am even fine with yellows. Again, yellows are good in the hunted. I will be happy to play these yellows, but I'll also be able to pitch them and get full value. 1, 2 sides of the blade, so I have a good amount of attack reactions here. One thing that I really like with Arakni is making use of the graphene chelicera. or Chelicera or something, or however you say it. Um, this dagger has stealth on it, which is very, very good. We love the stealth part because it allows us to use our demi hero ability on the dagger itself, so we can make use of that. So we have a few orb weavers from the reds. Cut from the same cloth allows us to mark our opponent and see their hands, so it's all very good. As you can see, we have very, very few blues here. We just didn't need a ton. We have 6, 9, and 15 reds. I would like a little bit more reds, but overall this deck ended up working out. So let's get back into the presentation here. Some of the pros of playing Arakni. You have disruptive effects, all right? None of the other heroes really disrupt like Arakni does, and that is because Arakni is Assassin, and that is a key staple of Assassin. You get to have 2 forms of attacks with daggers and stealth, and this is probably Arakni's biggest pro because Arakni has just so many attack reactions that affect either the dagger or the stealth card. When you have a hand of 3 cards and you're sending a dagger, your opponent, there is no way for your opponent to know if they should block that dagger or if they should block the card coming next. Maybe you don't have a card coming next. Maybe it's 3 attack reacts and you get over, however much damage that would be to kill them. This has happened to me. This is something that's very real. This is Arakni's best thing because maybe they do put 6 block in front of your dagger and then you play your stealth card, and now this stealth card is coming at them with a disruptive effect, and they wish they didn't block your dagger so much. So this is Arakni's biggest strength, is being able to split the damage with the attack reactions on both stealth and daggers. And then in response to that, you, as I mentioned before, have access to the most defense reactions. Being an assassin, you get all the dual class defense reactions, but you get a few that are just mono assassin as well. So you do get the most defense reactions out of all heroes. Some of the cons. There is a lot of anti-Arakni cards. All right, if you play Arakni, you killed the Emperor. People are looking to come after you. Hunt to the Ends of Wraith is a very good card that gets played against you, unfortunately, as well as all the Vengeance equipment, being able to have effects if their opponent is Arakni. So this is something you'll have to play through, unfortunately, but my experience is that it's not any bit game breaking, and it's something that's very manageable. You do rely on your mark mechanic to function, which means that you need to mark your opponent. So if they are stopping you from marking them, then you are just playing a pretty suboptimal deck that just has, decent cards in it, but nothing like spectacular. So if you're not able to mark your opponent, you're going to have a very tough game. You're going to have a very tough time to be able to close out, or even just to do anything that would be on the same power scale as what your draconic opponents could do to you. And then finally, there is a randomness in the flip. Sometimes you can flip into the demi hero that you exactly need at that time, and other times you don't. Other times you flip into, I don't know, let's say the Black Widow, but then you draw those stealth cards, right? And it's just attack reactions. Well, then now we're in a bit of hurt. Or you flip into the trapdoor and you already used your traps, right? This can happen. This isn't something that you should plan on happening by any means, but it can happen, and that's one of the downsides. All right, so let's talk about the matchups. So in the mirror, you're going to look to mostly stay untransformed. You're not trying to turn into one of the demi heroes. It's fine if you do, by all means, but you don't need to. The base form of Arakni allows your stealth cards to get +1 and go again on hit, which allows you to go wide, and that's actually very good. So you'll take that sort of strategy. And then, any defense reactions you have here, this is going to be big to help block any attack reactions they have. And then here again, as we just talked about, marking is very huge for Arakni. So knowing that you can consistently block out your opponent's dagger, then you should be fine to not get marked, so that they do not get the extra buff against you. Against Cindra, you want to do the opposite. You want to try to flip as many times as possible. is because you want to either race Cindra and put her into a spot where she has to respect any attack that comes her way, because there could be attack reaction connected to it, so around the 5 to 6 health range. Or you want to be able to turn into a disruptive Demi hero that just forces her to block or lose a card out of her hand, out of her arsenal, or you just turn into Trapdoor and you have another extra card to block her. So you do want to try to flip as many times as possible. And if that means you got to block with more than, than you would with like the mirror or against Fang, that's fine. Sometimes you can block with 3 cards in one. And if it's a 0 for 4 with an on hit effect, that's okay. We take those. And then Fang is going to be kind of a tough matchup, to be honest, because Fang likes to block us. So we need to kind of be playing in the same manner. We need to make sure that Fang does not get the fealties, because if Fang does not get the fealties that Fang needs in order to have free dagger attacks, then Fang cannot use 3 cards to block us out. And that's really what we want. We want Fang to not get the 3 fealties so that he can just have free attacks on us. Instead, we want him to consistently need like a blue or yellow to swing his daggers. All right, so let's talk about Cindra. So in Cindra, we're going to be looking to draft at least 10 draconic attacks. The more draconic the attacks we have, the better. So you're going to need yellows or blues to start with your dagger attack. That is because your dagger attack is a draconic attack. So you're going to need that to allow your combat chain to get very wide with cards like Lava Vein Loyalty, Burning Blade Dance, Hot on Their Heels. These are all cards that look to have a draconic attack before you play these cards so that they can have go again and you can continue playing more cards after the fact. Now, because you need a draconic attack for these type of cards to really go off, if you have a Ronin Renegade, you don't need to even pitch a card for your daggers. You could just go Ronin Renegade into any of those 0 cost cards, and now you don't even need a blue or yellow in your hand. Therefore, each time you draft a Ronin Renegade, that is 1 less blue or 1 less yellow that you need in your deck. Don't force the mark or the fealty mechanics, okay? And what I talk about with this is Dragon Power, Art of the Dragon cards, and there's like Silver Talons as well. There's a lot of cards that want to be draconic to do an effect. I have tried making a deck that prioritizes marking, as I did draft a lot of those type cards, and it was a failure. It just took too long, and it just took up too many other good spots that were other cards that either block for 3 or just are draconic to have a big chain link, are just more impactful. So don't force it. If it happens, it happens. You'll end up drafting a ton of on hit mark type cards or fealty maker cards. You don't need to have as many tagged targets. You don't need to have as many trap and releases as you could possibly draft to make this deck work. No, you don't. You could just draft a normal, like draft your draconic. Those cards will come around. You can draft them if they're the best cards, and then it'll just tend to just happen. You tend to have 1 to 2 fealties throughout the game. So if you have 1 or 2 cards that want to get a fealty to break to make them draconic, then that's fine. Flick cards are good enders. What I mean by flick, that is a reference to flick knives, where you can throw your dagger. There is a lot of cards that look to do this. Silver Talons can do this if draconic. Burning Blade Dance can do this. Throw yourself at them does this. These are very good cards to end the game. That's what I mean by enders. They're very good in the game cards. So if I see a blue throw yourself at them, I'm happy to take that, because there is a very good likelihood that if the game gets down to where I see that in my second cycle, they'll be at 1 to 2 life at that point, where all I need to do is send that card, throw a dagger, and the game's over. Talking about the Cindra gameplay, it's a go wide strategy with low cost. You're never going to play anything that costs 2 or higher, okay? Like, technically, you could play For the Realm, but you don't really even want to play that card. You want to play a lot of 0 cost with a few 1 costs here and there. You're going to only really attack like with one of your daggers a turn. This is because you want to consistently be able to get your daggers back. Again, if you have a good amount of draconic cards, this will be pretty easy. But you do need to make sure that you are presenting 3 draconic chain links to buy back a dagger. And basically, you're going to send 1 dagger a turn at them, and then buy the other one that was in your grave back, and just kind of rotate the daggers. You can block and play a value mid-range, and that's because a lot of your cards block for 3, especially the draconic cards, and so this is very good. This means that you can either choose to block 3 or send 3 at your opponent, and sometimes it's the better choice to block 3. There has been plenty of hands where I have a lot of 3 blocks in my hand, so I'll block 6 total for the turn, and then send a Fire Tenant Strike first into a For the Drakai. And that's a 2-card 8. So we take those. Those are really good value. And that's something Cindra can do. She can have these values. She can block with 3 cards and send 4, and it'd be very good. So look to do a value mid-range if the hand just doesn't line up. And that's what you can do with these 3 blocks. Okay, so let's look at a Cindra 3-0 deck that I drafted. Okay, so Fang, Cindra, Fang. Now, against the Draconic Heroes, you are going to want to win the die roll, so you can go second for sure. We did get the full equipment this time around, so that always feels very good. And as you can see here, we have a ton of Draconic cards, and that's what's going to really help bring back your daggers consistently. We do have Art of the Dragon Claw, to like disrupt their arsenal. And a dragon power. So we do have some stuff that wants to be draconic. But as you can see here, we don't have like a ton that marks. Like we have Han the Heals, we have Mark with Magma, and we have 1 red trap and release. And that's it. That's it. And I'll tell you that was plenty of times to be able to mark my opponent. Display Loyalty is a very good card too, because it just creates a fealty token. So that's always nice as well. So this is a 0 for 4. We take these all day, right? Like this is 0 from 4, so we take these all day. So just look to get these. I would say Blood Drop is a very bad card. I think I just kind of had to play it because those are my other cards, so they're not good. If we look at the blues and yellows, I have 12 that are not red, right? 7 blues, 5 yellows, and honestly, that felt fine. Especially when you're playing like Grow Claws, which is a yellow that you're perfectly fine with playing. And Fire Tenant Strike first, which is, again, another yellow you're perfectly fine playing. So some of these yellows are pretty good just because they're like on rate of like an average red card. All right, let's get back to the slides. All right, so some of the pros of playing Cindra. She has a very easy playstyle. She's basically just fat math. You know, you're just going to determine, is it better to attack or is it better to block? There's nothing that you're like thinking of like, oh, but the on hit here is really good. It's just fat math. You're just doing that. It tends to be the low drafted hero, and what I mean by that is like it tends to be the hero that only has 2 people drafting her. It tends to go 3 Fang, 3 Arakni, and 2 Cindras, or a mixture of 4, 2, 2. But she tends to be the 2. And she blocks surprisingly well, as we mentioned before. A lot of 3 blocks she has, so it works out very well for her. Some of the cons, she doesn't have any reactions. Technically, she could have Razor Reflex, but that's a rare, so you shouldn't expect to see that. But yeah, so no reactions for that late game push. She does have flick mechanics to have a late game push, but it doesn't have as much of a reach like Fang or Arakni does when they play their reactions on their daggers. She is reliant on Draconic for her weapon regeneration, so if you find yourself not having enough Draconic chain links to bring her weapon back out of the grave, then you could find yourself in a turn where you have no weapons, and obviously that's a very tough spot to be in. And she's a bit dice roll dependent. I don't really like to say that, but it is kind of proving the case here, especially against either the mirror match or against Fang. The Draconic heroes, she tends to really want to win the die roll so she can go second. You can win on first. That is not obtainable, but things are a lot easier when you get to go second. All right, so let's talk about the matchups. So against Arakni, just go at them. Just get aggressive. They're gonna try to disrupt you, so don't let them keep too many cards in hands. Send damage at them. If your card in your hand could either attack for 3 or block for 3, I tend to favor more on the side to attack because I want to get Arakni down to where even if they do change, they have to block with like 3 cards against me, so it doesn't even matter like what demi hero they change it to. And then use your armor to block daggers. Like, don't ever really put a card in front of the dagger unless you just think that might be it and that might kill you. Otherwise, just put one piece of armor in front of it, and that generally could cover it up if they don't have any attack reactions. And this is only to block the daggers when they're going to mark you on hit. All right, in the mirror, win the die roll. That's pretty true. If you don't win, you can use combos to get ahead. What I mean by that is there's a lot of Cindra cards out there that like gets you a good setups, like especially like her legendary card. It's like a very good card if you can set it up. So look to try to set up stuff like that, or just like any of the Art of Dragon cards or Dragon Power. Just trying to get a little setup going so that you could do like a 1-card 7 basically. So that's kind of what you're looking to do. So just blocking and getting value off the blocks of going second, or I'm sorry, going first, and then trying to catch up on the race by having these just very efficient fat math turns. If you do win the die roll, just go aggressive at them. Just get them. Just send your hand at them. Block if your hand never really functions, but oftentimes you'll just send damage through. Okay, so against Fang, because Fang's going to be blocking a little bit, you can send yourself at Fang, but you can also just play a little bit mid-rangey as well. If Fang gets to 3 fealties, then it's going to be very hard for you. So if you don't feel like you're racing them fast enough and they're getting their fealties faster than you really would want, you can always look to block some of the mark type effects. So if they place like a Sworn Vengeance on you, you can look to block that dagger fairly effectively, just so that you can prevent the mark from happening. And then, just as we talked about before, send those very efficient style hands, like those 2-card 8s or just a 0 for 4, whatever you need to. All right, let's talk about Fang. So with Fang, you want to draft around 10 draconic attack reactions or instances. Instances kind of count as attack reactions for Fang's daggers. You want to really prioritize any attack reaction or any non-attack action that looks to mark your opponent either on hit or on attack, as well as creating fealties on hit or on attack. You really want this because this is how you can get into a board state where you are able to block with 2 to 3 cards every hand and feel great about it, and just send your daggers for free with a 0-cost attack reaction. You also have a lot of 3 blocks. So if you're looking at a draft pack and maybe it's been like a few picks into this pack, and so there's no more draconic attack reactions, and there's like no more good red cards either, just look to draft your blue cards and your yellow cards, but look to get the 3 block value ones, right? So like Take a Stab and 2 to Point, I don't have very high because they block for 2. But cards like Hunt a Killer, Sworn Vengeance, Knife Drew Butter, these all block for 3, and so we'll take those cards. A few defense reactions is always good as well. This is because a lot of defense reactions out there, like Smoke Out and Den of the Spider, mark your opponent. And so this is something that can be very good for Fang to allow their attacks to make a fealty token when hit on the next turn. All right. So the playstyle, we want to try to do a few different things. One of the playstyles I personally like a lot is Turbo Fealty. Just trying to make as many fealties as quick as possible. Cards like Pledge Fealty allow for this to happen, as well as like Endear Devotion, and just other fealty creating cards out there. If we are able to do this, then we can just block heavy for the rest of the game. And if we're able to have a good amount of these fealties, then we really want to prioritize keeping our zero cost attack reactions, especially if they're draconic, so that we can just swing a dagger for free, use our zero cost attack reactions to get that dagger go again, and then swing the other dagger for free as well. So that's really what we're trying to do there. We want to, if we can't do the turbo fealty, or if it's just taking a little longer throughout the game, we want to have efficient 2-card plays to present damage. So maybe we don't need to give our dagger go again. Maybe we just need to deal damage to our opponent. So instead of trying to, like, use 3 to 4 cards, we could just settle with 2, using 1 to pitch to attack with the dagger, and then with that resources floating, just come in with some sort of attack reactions. This allows us to chip damage over time, and eventually, even if we don't ever get our 3 fealties, we can get our opponent low enough to where they have to respect our daggers, and can't just put no blocks in front of it or 3 blocks in front of it, but instead they have to put like up to 6 blocks. So that's really the spot we want to be at. So even if we just play this efficient 2-card plays, it can help chip our opponent down to get us there. And that will probably be the case with like Arakni or the mirror. Finally, another way you can play, especially when we're looking at like a deck like Cindra, you could just get really aggressive. If your hand lines up to where you can have 2 attack reactions and come in with both your daggers, then this is something that can really look to put your opponent down into the single digits. And the reason why we want them down to the single digits is, again, we want to get to that spot where anytime we send a dagger, our opponent really has to question how much block can they put in front of this and survive. And that's where we want to be. So if we can get aggressive and put our opponent down to that area, then we're going to be very all right. All right, so let's go look at another draft deck here. Again, I don't think this one's going to be very fine-tuned, but it's all right because it did get 3-0 for us. We did end up facing 3 Arachnis. So we did beat all the Arachnis of the draft, but either way. So we didn't get the arm piece here, unfortunately, but 3 pieces is kind of like the minimum, so at least we got that. As you can see here, I am heavy on the draconic stuff, and I even have 2 pledge fealties to help with that turbo fealty package. Yeah, so when I am drafting Fang, I am perfectly fine having draconic attack action cards to kind of like go in between the daggers, or even like in the case of this one, come in before the first dagger, because this allows my first dagger to have abilities like this. If you have controlled 2 or more draconic chain links, you get an additional effect. So if I'm able to come with Hunted's Wrath, that's 1 draconic chain link, then I swing my dagger, and that would be the 2nd draconic chain link. So it allows for the additional effects of some of these other cards, which is very good. That's why I don't mind having some of these draconic attack reacts, even if it's just this one, just because it can make a fealty if they're already marked. I do have a good amount of blues and yellows, and you do want to have a good amount just because before you get to the 3 fealty tokens, you are going to be having to pitch in order to swing your daggers. They do cost 1, and so you are going to need at least a yellow, if not a blue, in your hand. That's why you do want to have around 10 combination of yellows and blues. I think here we have 11, so we meet that mark. And they're all 3 blocks. They all block for 3, and that's like kind of the thing that Fang wants to do, is he wants to be able to block very efficiently, and then when he gets to 3 fealties, he can block with all of his blues and yellows because he doesn't need those anymore, and they all block for 3. All right, let's get back to the slides. All right, so some of the pros. Very easy to draft. You just need to draft draconic attack reacts, and then just draft good warrior cards, and that happen to already block for 3, and you kind of don't have to think about it too hard when you're drafting. And he's fairly easy to see if you're in the right seat to be drafting him or not. You block very, very efficiently because, again, you have so many 3 blocks. Now, your draconic attack reacts only block for 2, but oftentimes you're going to be looking to attack with them anyway, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that too much. And as mentioned before, if your opponent's at 5 life, it gets really, really scary for them anytime you send a dagger, especially if it's a free dagger. They do have to think, oh man, am I going to get hit with a big attack react heavy dagger? Or are they going to play something like Tooth of the Dragon on me, where I block 6 on this dagger because I don't want to get hit, and they play Tooth of the Dragon, and then their other dagger's pumped up, and the first one isn't even pumped up at all, really. So it's like, you know, it's hard for your opponent at that point. So that is a good thing when you're playing Fang. So some of the cons. It can take time to set up. If you don't have that turbo fealty, then it can take a little bit of time to set up your fealties in order to be able to have that sort of gameplay style. So you might get into this motion where it's like maybe you never get your fealties in time, especially going against a Cindra that looks to kill you as soon as possible. You're very reliant on draconic cards. That is to keep all your fealties around. In order to keep your fealties, you have to either make a fealty that turn or play a draconic card. So you do need to consistently make or play draconic cards, and so that can be a little bit of a headache and might make you take a little bit more damage than you really want to on a turn, just to keep your fealties around. And then you also share a lot of bombs with Assassin during the draft. In particular, you're sharing Scar Tissue, which is such a good card. Both Fang and Arakni wants to have this card, so that's very unfortunate there, as well as like Incision, right? So these are very, very good cards that you have to share. You're also sharing some good cards with Cindra as well. Hunt to the End of Wrath. So some of your best cards are actually multi-class cards. All right, let's talk about some matchups for Fang. So against Arakni, this is actually kind of a favored matchup because you like to block. So you're going to block often to prevent damage leaks. If you see a dagger coming your way, you can put a 3 block in front of that dagger. Not only do you prevent them from being able to mark you, but you can also prevent a little bit of damage if they play an attack reaction on that. And it's okay because you actually want to be blocking. Obviously, D-reacts are very good here because they are also coming with a lot of attack reacts. So having D-reacts to kind of stymie their attack reacts is very good. And then, like I was just mentioning, block daggers. That's very good. Cindra, you're if you get turbo fealty, you can like just block out Cindra like there's no other. If not, then you can look to race her. If you don't get the turbo fealty, then you know, if you get the hands that have like stuff like Brothers of Flame or Sisters of Fire that work on your second dagger, if the fab math checks out and you're dealing more damage than you're taking, then you can just take all that damage and race her. This especially works if you are going second. And then in the mirror, it's a race to 3 fealties, because whoever gets the 3 fealties first can start blocking more attacks, and that's where your damage is in this matchup. Your damage is through your attack reactions, chipping damage over their blocks, and if they race and they get 3 fealties for you, they can put 1 more card in front of your attacks, making it harder for you to win that race. Let's talk about how we can start practicing drafts online, so you can practice without having, or you should still go to your LGS. 100% you should go to your LGS, but you can practice when it's not Armory Day.
Look at this QR code. It'll take you to the Discord, and then there is a README. Read that. It'll allow you to figure out how to participate in drafts, and then you can start drafting there.
And finally, have fun. This is a pretty fun draft set. It's not my favorite, but it did surprise me on like how open you can be on the drafts, and I do like open drafts. So,
and there you have it. Everything we needed to know about draft. Again, if you want even more information, if you want to see specific draft rankings, consider becoming a Patreon. If you want to get cool playmats like this, then consider becoming a channel member, where you can also see exclusive videos. I want to give a special shout out to my Patreons that are already subscribed, as well as our channel members, and of course our sponsors, Metal Fab Tokens and Flesh and Baubles. Until next time, keep on fabbing.